Here we go. Welcome to the February Art Walk. I am Josh Gothier, and I'm here with my co-organizer, Claire Guyton. We are the co-organizers of Local Writers Read, which is a literary series that spotlights Maine authors in various genres. And we are very happy to be partnering with LA Arts for their Art Walk again this year. Our focus this season is Maine Literary Award winners and nominees, and we're looking specifically at the short fiction categories. And thankfully, our very own Claire is a nominee for a couple pieces in these categories. And so we're going to be spotlighting her work this month. So I'll turn it over to Claire. Tell us a little bit about what you'll be reading, and then take it away.
Thank you. And I just want to say we will branch out a little bit beyond fiction. We're going to focus on the short works categories. We did fiction last time, and we're doing fiction this time. So I submitted 2 stories, and both were selected. One was a traditional length short story called SAT Question The Moon, and the other is a micro. SAT Question was written in the form of just that, the kind of word problem you encounter in a test like the SAT. And it was published at the online magazine New World Writing, if anyone wants to catch it there. There's a link to it at my website as well, claireguyton.com. The other is a micro called Like Shit on a Cracker, which was published at Vestal Review and selected for the Best Small Fictions Anthology. So I will read that one. Okay, Like Shit on a Cracker. Like a fine Merlot. That's what he said. That's what he called me. And that wasn't enough to put me off. When a man says you're like a fine Merlot and still you get in his car, make small talk about the famed restaurant where he reserved a table in the back, let him take your hand as you glide through the parking lot, you sort of have to say, yeah, I asked for it. Like an apple in autumn, the blush in my cheeks. My eagerness at the menu. Sure, I pointed. I love crab. Like a schoolgirl on prom night. My smile like a cool slice of melon in August. Like a script, I thought. Like butterfly wings, my dress. Like the shade of a weeping willow, my eyes. Yeah, like a bad script. Like a man fond of his own voice. Like a date from the 1950s. I reached for the actual Merlot, drank the whole glass down. A bit like a black hat with his shot glass, he says, like it's funny, but also like a woman who takes what she wants. But then again, like a kid with a lollipop, too impatient not to bite. Look, too many damn similes, I said. I did. I called him on it. But he just smiled. Like a spoiled teenager at her tiara party, he said then. Like a little girl who takes the head off her chocolate Easter bunny. I said, really? How about like a frat boy who thinks he owns the world because his daddy gives him too much money? Like a quarterback who always calls the wrong play in the last 2 minutes of the game. When a man pulls his mouth tight and slams his glass on the tabletop, and you don't get up while the wine's still sloshing and toss your linen dinner napkin, then stalk through the flickering votives, lobster tail, unobtrusive string quartet, triple-decker dessert card, then you have to accept that you wanted this fight. You chose that volume, that heat. Like a slit-eyed cat mewling for more cream, he said, his face as red as the wine, like a used-up old bitch having a flashback. And that dress, like a hooker, late on a slow night and behind on her rent. I slapped aside the vase of flowers between us and pointed at his face, like a teacher who bullies the fat kid, like a preacher who screws the flower lady, like the senator with a little intern problem, like a cop all hopped up on bullets, like a dictator with fake medals across his chest, like my father. When you go from a kiss as velvet plum, as a fine Merlot, to seeing your father's rage hurled at you across the crab bisque with corn kernels and chives. That's when you push hard for something, anything original, anything to end scene. Like a cracked tooth, I whisper, cracked right down to the bone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I know I've told you before, but it's always so interesting hearing just the way you play with form and voice and story and the different things you do with it on just all the different pieces that I've gotten to hear over time. So it's always fun to see what you're gonna do with a piece.
Thank you.
And so going off of that, tell us a little bit about this particular piece and where it came from.
Okay. Well, as it turns out, both of the stories that I submitted for the Maine Literary Awards um, were written in 2012 as part of what I like to call my year of story, or they were drafted then. So long story short, I found myself between writing projects and completely stuck early in 2012. And on top of the usual stress we writers feel when the words aren't flowing, I felt obligated to produce because the Maine Arts Commission had awarded me their literary fellowship that year. And you can't accept the support of your community and then not produce. So by the spring, I decided that I would use the inspiration of May, which had been established as Short Story Month, to focus myself and finally learn how to write very short fiction, something I had been interested in but had never pursued. So I wrote a story every day in May 2012, and I was so elated by all the energy I got from that, I decided to keep going. So from May 1, 2012 to April 30th, 2013, I wrote a story every single day. And as part of that process, I maintained a blog where I put up a post devoted to every story, which is all to say that I consulted that blog in preparation for our conversation. So would you, Josh, like to hear about the day I wrote the first draft of Like Shit on a Cracker?
Please.
Okay, so I knew I'd written it very early in my year, but I didn't remember that it was the very first story I wrote. So I wrote that story May 1st, 2012. And I was surprised to read that I had just pulled an all-nighter, and I was an editor at a literary magazine at the time, and I was working on this huge project, which I remember very well. And I had pushed through the night to get it done. So Like Shit on a Cracker was inspired by exhaustion and my promise to myself that I would start my story project on May 1st, no matter what. And I remember thinking that it would be fun to write a story entirely of similes. I had been thinking about that for a while. So probably I was just so tired that floated to the top, and that's what I wrote. And as it turns out, all I had to do was give that story a tiny polish. And it's probably my most successful piece of writing to date because it was, like I said, it was published by the Vestal Review, which is a really important journal for very short fiction, and then nominated by their editor for the Best Small Fictions Anthology, and it was selected. So let me show you the book, which I just got in the mail the other day, and I'm very happy with. I think it's such a pretty book. It's nice and thick. Global anthology. I highly recommend Best Small Fictions for anyone who really likes very short fiction. And so, which is all to say, huge thank you to the Maine Arts Commission, a very important institution in our state. Thank you.
Yes. All right, so to wrap us up, do you have any recommendations for our listeners for fiction authors or a good piece to go check out?
Yes, I'm really excited about this because typically when people ask me about short stories, I throw out names like George Saunders, Amy Bender, Amber Sparks. These are my favorite short story writers. They're wonderful, but I wanted to recommend somebody who is new to me. I have been carrying around in my head my memory of this story that I read years ago in the Alaska Quarterly Review, and I didn't know who wrote it or the name of it or anything. But when I started thinking about what I would recommend, this story came back to me. I went to their website. Fortunately, they have their whole archive online, and I was able to dig through until I found it. I'm so excited. The story is called Pleasantville Turns out it was published in 2016. I found it because I was doing a deep dive for submissions. So I know I saw it when it was published, so it was current then. So that's how long that story, one reading of a story, sat in the back of my mind. I love it. It's by George Choundas, Choundas. Choundas, Choundas. Story title is Pleasantville. It's at Alaska Quarterly Review. And it turns out he has written a collection that was published in 2018 called The Making Sense of Things. The Making Sense of Things. I immediately ordered it. It's wonderful writing, really fresh. Apparently, he's a former FBI agent, which may explain why it sounds his writing is so different. Anyway, so go read that. I will warn everyone that Pleasantville, the story, is pretty heavy. It's about some disturbing things, and so there's quite a lot of violence in it. And I have been avoiding heavy things through the pandemic. So if you have too, put it off. Maybe look for something else of his and try it another time. But do come back to it because he's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so that brings us to the end of another author spotlight. So as always, we really want to thank LA Arts for letting us continue to do these. It's been so much fun to spotlight different Maine authors all through these seasons, even in the virtual format that we've been doing for a while. So stay tuned, check out the other artists and creators that are being highlighted this month. And also stay tuned for Local Writers Read. We are planning our own virtual season coming up for 2021. And we hope to have more details of that to announce soon. So until then, thanks for watching and tune in next month.